What is up? What is up? And welcome back to another episode of Blood and Beer, the show where we talk blood sport and we drink beer. I'm your host, Matt. With me is my friend Cody. We're doing a UFC 312 bash, going over the pay-per-view. Sean Strickland taking on Dricuss Duplessis, challenging for the title in a rematch from last year's contest, and Zhang Weili defending her title against Tatiana Suarez. We're going to get into all that in a second, as well as make our best bets, break down the main card. I'm up 705 from the Saudi card. Cody's up 585.50 on our picks from last week. So, that being said, Cody, welcome back. And before we get into 312, let's talk about UFC Saudi. Nasruddin Imavov, second round knockout of Israel Adesanya. What's next for both of these guys? We'll start with Izzy and then we'll go to Imavov. So, what's next for Izzy?
First off, thanks for having me back. I love being on here, man. This is so much fun every week. For Izzy, right now, title fights are out the window. We can't even be thinking about anything competitive in that nature for him. If we are, we're just taking opportunities from these younger guys coming up in the octagon. Um, if he wants to stay around, I don't see Dana White saying no to another contract just because of the name. I think he would draw the purses. And I think that's honestly what he needs to be going for at this point is going for bigger purses. Um, he's in his mid to late 30s now. He's getting up there. He's now on four straight losses,
Three straight losses, four out of his last five. And
four
yeah,
out of his last five. That's correct.
and
And
with being 30, I think he's 35 or 36, but he's had
36,
like
yeah,
75 kickboxing matches, like 40 boxing matches, 30 plus MMA, UFC fights. So there's miles on the tires. Like,
absolutely. I completely agree with you there. And I think if he wants to continue, it's not going to be for much longer. And if it is, I think he's just going to be fighting big names for big purses, maybe for a BMF title, something like that. But
yeah, fun stuff. I think a fun matchup for him if he wants to stick around would be Kevin Holland. I have no problem with him sticking around because he looked good until he didn't. Like,
absolutely, absolutely, he really looked like that could have went any other way until he, like you said, he didn't. I mean, it
yeah,
just
I mean,
it just catches up to you.
I keep hearing people throw out other contenders and stuff like that. I can't remember the names, but I haven't heard anyone say Kevin Holland yet, and I think that would be a fun matchup, seeing Kevin Holland versus Israel Adesanya. So, yeah, I mean, retirement, he could do that because he's set money wise. He's got real estate. He's got his money from the UFC. He sold a ton of pay-per-views. He's well off. And then as far as Imavov, though, what's next for this guy? What do you see next for him? Because looks like in the title picture, obviously we have Strickland and Duplessis fighting this weekend, and it would be a perfect timeline for Imavov if it wasn't for the fact that you got Khamzat, who Dana White already said is getting the title shot. So what's next for Imavov? Does he wait for that shot, or does he take another fight? What's next?
Honestly, with that being said, with Khamzat and Dana White already saying that he's getting the next shot at the title fight, um, I was thinking that Imavov takes the loser of this fight because I think the loser of this fight, we'll get into it later, is not going to be far off from the winner. So I think regardless, the winner or loser of this fight would be a really good challenge for Imavov. And being ranked number three right now, that would be just it put him right up there, number two, number one in the middleweight class, putting him right up there for the title for either whoever wins this fight versus Cosmot. Who at the end of the day, I think it will be Cosmot. You know what I'm saying? Because I think he's the next future of that division.
I agree with you. The only problem with Hamza is obviously scheduling issues. He can't travel certain parts of the world. But my idea for Imavov kind of leads into our next question because my first thought was let's put him against the loser, like you said, a loser of this fight. It makes perfect sense. And then if the loser beats Imavov again, they're not far off from a title shot. But that kind of puts a logjam in the division, and it blocks out these up and comers that are on their way up. They keep getting beat by these guys they keep getting chance after chance because they keep knocking the guys off right below them. I think that you can have the loser of this fight a Robert Whitaker or drop down in the rankings a little bit because they've got their immediate rematch. Nothing's owed to them at this point. If we do Imavov versus one of those guys and Imavov loses, that sets Imavov right back down. And then you have Kyle Barhaio waiting in the wings, but he's going to have to take another fight as well. So it kind of blocks the up and coming superstars from coming up. So I think the best move for Imavov would be a match with Caio Borralho. Let two young prospects show, hey, these two are going to be the next guys. These are have a main event fight night or have them be co-main on a pay-per-view. Like these are the next guys, and they're fighting for a title shot against Khamzat or against Duplessis or against Strickland. But that's what you got to do is elevate them that way and not risk blocking up and coming superstars because right now a lot of people are saying UFC's experiencing kind of a superstar shortage with the guys that are at the top and that have been at the top for so long kind of get into towards the end of their careers. You got your Dustins, your Connor who hasn't been around as long, your Israel Adesanya's, your Max Holloway, your Robert Whitaker, those guys, all these superstars in MMA, they're getting older, but they've been holding their spot at the top for so long. So does MMA have a superstar shortage, or is it more of a changing of the guard that we're seeing where these guys just haven't been elevated yet? What's your thought on that?
About to say, I don't think I would call it a shortage of superstars because I think it's going to be how, like the typical fan views mixed martial arts. You got actual fans like you and I that pay attention more in detail. But if you have, you're just your typical pay-per-viewer listener, they're going to be watching the promos and seeing how it was back in the day with a Connor or like a John Jones versus Cormier, how they would talk on TV. That's what was selling and that's what was getting people hooked. But people don't realize what's actually in these divisions and what's in these classes is some real talent. You know what I'm saying? You have your Kayla Harrisons down there in the women's divisions. Bo Nickel is nobody to be, messing with. We can't forget about the stud over there in England, Paddy Pimblett, the Irishman. You know, there's plenty of young talent that's out there. That's going to be coming up. We've already seen um, Sean O'Malley, about to say he's drawing a blank on me. That he's come up. He'll get another shot that's going to be around for a while. These young up and comers are going to be around, but like you said, these guys have been at the top of these divisions for a long time. Like your John Jones and stuff like that. It's just you look at other sports, we could just call it like it is. It's like you got your Brady's, you got your Mannings that are going to be there, or you got your James and Currys, or you got your Bonds and Pujols and things like that are going to be up there at the top all the time competing. And that's just greatness. Those are going to be the ones in the Hall of Fames. And I think we just have to appreciate their greatness until they get taken off, which won't be too far long, because these young up and comers, they're no scrubs. These are the real deals,
Yeah.
These these Dagestans and these Irishmen and these Australians, these Brazilians, they're freaking monsters coming out of nowhere. And excuse me, these legends, I guess you could say, like you said, the Izzies and the Connors and like even the Max Holloways, they're going to be around. Like even Nate Diaz is getting another fight this year. You know what I'm saying? There's always going to be room for them, but I do agree. I think it's just not a shortage. I just think like with the new generation, we just don't see as much flashy promos, as we're used to in the UFC, and we haven't for a while. We have kind of dulled out on that a little bit. Like even Cowboy Cerrone used to put on some nasty promos. We haven't seen a nasty Cowboy Cerrone promo in a while.
He's
It's
retired.
he's retired exactly. We haven't seen that level.
Okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think that we are kind of in a situation where the guys that are coming up aren't superstars. They're not getting across with the fans as much. But like you said, it is different. It's viewed more of as a sport now. The UFC is sold as a brand. It's sold on holy shit moments. It's not sold on getting these guys over. It's their job to get themselves over. And it's not happening as much as it used to, and they still have the same platform. You got idiots like Bryce Mitchell doing his thing out there, but yeah, guys just don't know what they're doing. You got a bunch, and also these guys coming from other parts of the world, they don't speak the language, so they don't get over as well. But also, they're so dedicated and disciplined to the sport that everybody else has to be. You don't have these wild cards, these guys that are going out getting in trouble, getting in the news and stuff for crazy shit like that. Like they're getting in news for the wrong things, but not in that way. They're not like fun, the party guy or whatever. So you're not seeing that. You're not seeing like the bad boy image that they used to have. But I think as the sport continues to evolve, these guys that are just putting on these holy shit moments, like the Makachevs, who are just landing the Darce choke over and over, or like the Tapurias, who's knocking out everybody that he goes up with. I think that you're going to see that get people more over as opposed to just selling with talking shit. There will always be shit talk. There's always going to be the next McGregor who won't be McGregor, or maybe they'll be bigger, but you know, it's just that's not what it's all based on. Just because you don't have a Conor McGregor doesn't mean it's a shortage. It just means that these guys, it's evolving. It's more of a sport now. These guys are seeing their place and they're saying, my performance needs to speak for itself. So they're in the gym 7 days a week, busting their ass. They're not out doing the crazy shit. They're not doing a press tour all over the world anymore like the UFC used to do because these guys are in camps. They can't be traveling. Like that's where we're at now. But that being said, let's get into UFC 312. It's a card, all right. It is a card. That is for sure. It's a pay-per-view card that they want people to pay for every view. How do you grade this card that is a card?
This card that is a card. Um, I gave it a C plus with the uprising of possibilities to be a B plus to an A minus because you just never know what Dana White's going to whip together and cook here. I mean, the names on this card, they don't light a room very bright. Let's be honest, but you never know. Lightning strikes in a bottle. It's just it could happen.
So I gave this card a D plus, and I think best case scenario it ends up being a B minus. If every fight's an absolute banger, an absolute war, we can go walk away from it and say, man, those were two awesome title fights and a bunch of fun fights. But aside from the title picture, there are no stakes on this card at all. None of these guys are fighting for a ranking. Nobody on this card is ranked. Nobody's fighting to be the next guy up. There's not like there's just nothing that sticks out on this card. Nobody's like, wow, this guy's the next thing because they're not fighting anybody that they can beat and you can say, wow, that guy's impressive. Like maybe the best thing that could happen is Taliesin Teixeira has a highlight reel knockout, and people are like, "Wow, he could be the next heavyweight superstar." Something like that could happen because heavyweight it's so easy to move up in the ranks with that kind of thing. But other than that, there's nothing to be gained for most of these fighters that aren't fighting for a title. It's just another fight for them, another paycheck in front, and a lot of them are Australian, so they're getting to fight in front of their home crowd. But I mean, it's just not a good card. It's really put together poorly. It has a ton of Australians, but no Australian superstars. You know what I mean? Like you don't have your Kai,
Absolutely.
you don't have your Volkanovski, you don't have your Adesanya who just fought last week in Saudi. But goodness, I can't blame him for not wanting to fight in Australia because when he fought Sean Strickland in Australia, the crowd got behind Strickland. They booed the shit out of him. So that's where they're at. Australia is paying a ticket to have the UFC come to their country, and they want to see a bunch of Australian fighters on it. Problem is, a lot of the Australian fighters, aside from Volkanovski, aren't wanting to fight on this card. I think, and Volkanovski says he wants to, but he only wants to fight for a title also. So that's where we're at with that. So with our low expectations for the card, you think it could get up to an A minus, shockingly. With our low expectations, though, what do you think the best card? What fight on this card are you most pumped for?
I think you mentioned it earlier is the Taliesin Teixeira fight. Um, I think he's he's got knockout power. I mean, he's one of like right now he's one of one in his own way. He's 7-0, and every one of his fights have come in the first round by victory, knockout, or TKO. Something like that. Sorry, something stuck to my foot. I think with the Taliesin Teixeira fight, I think with the powerful strikes that we can see in that one quick, early, I think that could be really exciting. I think the Suarez Weili fight could be really, really fun. You know, it just depends if it's going to be a lot of ground control in that match. Because I know how both fighters are there. But if they can keep it striking somehow, there could be a lot of fun moments in that one. And if you can have some power takedowns, uh, we know Strickland Duplessis is going to be fun. It's there's two strikers there. It's just a matter of if Strickland can hold him off the ground and hold off the takedowns this time around and whatnot, and just bite off the points. Um, it's not a lot of fun moments on this card. It's pretty poor, but I think the Taliesin Teixeira fight for me is honestly going to be the most fun for me personally.
Okay, that could be a fun fight. Justin Tafa's turned in some fun performances. I forget the guy's name, but fought a fellow from Mexico that was basically the Mexican version of Justin Tafa, where they just swung leather the whole time, smashing each other in the face. It was a fun fight. So, dude's got a chin. It could be a fun fight. The fight I'm most pumped for on this card is going to be Jack Jenkins taking on Gabriel Santos. Jack Jenkins has broken several people's legs in fights by kicking them. He's got nasty leg kicks, and he's got good boxing also. Gabriel Santos is an awkward striker. He's got power. I think he's 1-2 in the UFC, but it was against Onama and Leron Murphy were his two losses, if I'm not mistaken. So he hasn't lost to scrubs. But Jack Jenkins coming in as a big dog in this one. I think he's a live dog here too. But it's going to be a fun fight. It's going to be a firefight. If he can get those leg kicks off, it's going to be bad news for Santos because people can't take many from him. But in Santos' fight, he constantly switches stances to avoid the leg kick. So whatever stance you're in, he'll just switch to get in the stance to avoid the leg kick, the lead leg. So it'll be interesting to see how Jenkins solves that puzzle. If he does, Santos has awkward striking from range. It's going to be a fun fight, I think. So that's the fight I'm most pumped for. Moving on to our next topic, though. We get the women's title fight. It's Zhang Weili defending against Tatiana Suarez. And Suarez is coming off of a submission victory over Jessica Andrade in August of 2023. Hasn't fought since then. She fought earlier that year, but she's only had two fights in the past 5 years, 5.5 years, really. And there's other fighters that are coming up in the division. We've seen it kind of clear out with Namajunas moving up to 125. But do you see any other contenders that might have been passed over for this position and over by Suarez? Not saying Suarez isn't deserving. She's a beast. She's had some tough times to cause these layoffs, but other women are putting in the work. Do you think anyone was passed up for this shot?
Excuse me. Tatiana Suarez is, like you said, she's a beast. I know it's been a long layoff, and being 11-0 and showing that she's unstoppable. I think right now she's ranked the number 10 pound for pound fighter in UFC. She's even if she's not getting in the fights, she's still whenever she is in there, she proves it. And if she has that ranking still, she has that ranking for a reason. I think the fight's going to be electric between her and Weili. But if it could have been anyone, I think it should have been. I'm gonna botch her name. I apologize. Virne Jadaroba.
Yep, Virna Jandaroba. Yes.
Virna Jadaroba. I think that she has the. I feel like she had the most. I feel like she could have been up next because we watched Jan, or I think her name is Jan Zinan.
Yan Jianan, yeah.
Yan Jianan. She got absolutely demolished by Weili, and it was a unanimous decision that way. I don't think that would have been fair for the other contenders, coming up into that division. Um, if it wasn't gonna be Tatiana Suarez, I thought it would have been her. But I'm not mad at the pick because I think Weili needs some good competition, and I think Tatiana Suarez has won her six strike percentage is insane. She doesn't miss. She has insane accuracy with her punches, and she has a really good ground game to combat Weili's. So I think that's gonna be a really good matchup. But if it was anybody, it was Jadaroba. Sorry, I think she was gonna be the next one up because she's ranked what I think number 4 in the division.
Uh,
Don't quote me wrong. Number 3,
3 or 4, yeah. I'd have
3 or 4, yeah. But she's 21-3 herself with 8 first round knockouts, 8 first round finishes. I apologize. So
yeah.
she's a quick finisher herself. So I felt like
She's
she
on
could
a
have been next
tear.
up.
She's on a tear right now. I think a 6 or 7 fight win streak. She's got great wrestling. That's who I would think that was passed up for this as well. I want to say that Suarez and John Doroba were booked, supposed to fight in December, but then the fight was just axed and nobody heard anything until this fight was announced.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure what was going on there, but Weili did need to defend, even though Suarez didn't necessarily do anything against anyone to earn the number one contender fight. She has always been that next person up. Even back in 2019, before she went out for 4 years, she was looked at as the next one up, and now she's getting her due. So, but yeah, Jandaroba, she's probably next. She's been tearing through the division. Her wrestling second to none. Her jiu-jitsu is amazing. That's who I would say also. So I'm glad we're on the same page there. And then finally, before we get into our main card breakdown, Sean Strickland versus Dricuss du Plessis are rematching for a fight that happened about a year ago. And winner of this fight is going to fight Khamzat in their first title defense, or for Dricuss, it'll be his third title defense. So who do you think matches up best with Khamzat out of these two if they were to go and face him?
If it had to be one of the two, it would have to be Duplessis, right? I mean, because of the ground game that he has. Because Strickland doesn't have the ground game that Duplessis has. And Hosmot can defend anything. I mean, he has what he has. He's got wins by the KO and sub. I mean, I think he has six submission wins or six KO wins and eight. It's
Yeah, I mean,
I have the numbers flip flopped, but they
yeah,
are just. I mean,
dude's an animal.
he's a freak, and he can handle both sides of the octagon on the ground or up and up standing. He can handle the striking game with Strickland, or he can handle the ground game plus the striking of Duplessis. You know, I think Duplessis would be the better matchup, even though Strickland could probably be a little more of a risk just because of the power he has behind his strikes. Um, but personally, to me though, I don't think Hamzat would really have a difficulty with either one of them. At the end of the day, I think Duplessis though, for me personally though, would give him the hardest difficulties.
Yeah, I think Duplessis would give him a more difficult. I think Duplessis would be a really tough matchup for Hamzat with his awkwardness, his power. He is so strong. Also, Hamzat's strong, but Duplessis seems to just like be able to chuck guys off of him, and I feel like he'd still be able to do that to Hamzat, even though we haven't seen anyone do it to Hamzat. I think that Ox could do it, and Strickland's ground game's no joke. He's got a good ground game. He just doesn't use it. He likes to strike, and with Hamza, if I think that he would be able to trip Strickland up early and maybe get an early submission. But against Strickland in the later rounds, Strickland would gas Hamza so bad just by keeping it on the feet on the outside. He would jab the shit out of him. He would outbox him. He would just keep him at range. I mean, by the second or third round, he would just tear Hamza apart if it got that far. But it would be a big if. I think Dricuss does match up better, just power for power. He's so awkward. He's not an easy matchup for anybody. Hamzat might take him down, but the way Dricuss falls, he's just going to slide right out of it for some reason. It's so I think Dricuss would be a tough matchup, and Dricuss he might be able to take Hamzat down. He's strong as shit, dude. I mean, not in the first round, but when Hamzat begins to gas, Dricuss gasses in every single fight. Like just looks dead on the stool, and then he's out there like,
He really does though.
dude, and he's
By
still
round three,
and he's still just but it's like he gets better when he's like that. It's the weirdest thing. Like
it,
who knows how. It's the weirdest thing. He's the best shit fighter in the world. It's
it's just I think it's just his muscle memory kicks in, man, and he gets into a zone, into a rhythm once he gets
what
into his.
what do you learn that from? Flailing and golly. I mean,
That's how you become the champion, man. Is you just learn those unorthodox ways of just getting out of crazy situations.
it is insane what this man's been able to do.
It really has, man.
With that being said, though, we'll get into our main card breakdown here. We'll kick things off with the main card opener. Jake Matthews taking on Francisco Prado. And I'll let you start. What's your thoughts on this fight? How do you think this is going to be going down?
I think Jake Matthews wins this one convincingly. Francisco Prado has a really bad issue with grappling and takedowns. I think his takedown defense is something around like 25%. It's very, very subpar for the UFC. Um, and Jake Matthews is a very good grappler. With Jake Matthews also coming off a win, he's already got some momentum coming off, and Francisco Prado's coming off a loss coming into this fight. So he's going into his camp, coming into a different strategy. He's coming off with, I mean, he's coming in.
Oh, you cut out on me, Cody. Uh, we'll pause this recording for a moment. All right, we are back from some technical difficulties with the main card breakdown. So we're going to kick things off with Jake Matthews taking on Francisco Prado. And Cody, how do you see this fight going down between the Aussie and the Brazilian or the Argentine?
Um, I think personally, I think Jake Matthews is going to walk away with this one. I don't think Francisco Prado has very much. I mean, he has a chance in this one, but he has a very poor takedown defense rate. I think at like 25%. It's not very good. And he's a very, very poor grappler. And Jake Matthews is not he's a pretty solid grappler, but he's not a great grappler himself. But he's way, way more advanced than Francisco Prado. Jake Matthews is coming into this fight off a W himself, while Prado's coming in off a loss. So there's going to be two different types of motivation coming into this fight. But I think with Jake Matthews being at home in Australia with the crowd behind him, I think he's going to walk away with the victory here.
Yeah, I think so too. Prado, he's normally a 155er and he's coming up to 170. He had a good fight against Daniel Zellhuber, but again, Zellhuber still won the fight. And Jake Matthews, he's not small for 170. He's got a 4 inch reach advantage. When fighters have a 4 inch reach, they win 60% of the time, anyways. And not just the 4 inch reach advantage, but he's also a natural welterweight as opposed to the natural 155er and Francisco Prado. He's got nasty knees in the clinch. He's knocked people out with knees from the clinch before. But it's going to be tough to stay in the clinch against Jake Matthews, who's going to be the bigger, stronger guy. He's going to be able to push him around. He's going to be able to control that clinch. He's not going to be getting caught with knees unless he gets hurt. And I just don't see Prado hurting him. I think Matthews has the edge on the ground. He's going to be able to keep him on the outside. He's got a good jab. He's got good kicks. So I think it's Matthews' fight to win. He's going to kick things off with this for the Aussie crowd on the main card. So yeah, we're on the same page there. I think Matthews takes this one pretty easily. But the next one we're moving on to Jimmy the Brute Crew. He's taking on Rodolfo Bellato, and this fight, goodness, it's one guy that's kind of on the way up and one guy that seems to be on the way down or halfway on the way out. Jimmy Crute, I think he took his gloves off in his last fight. He's riding a bit of a rough patch. He's lost to Jamal Hill, Anthony Smith, and most recently Alonzo Menafield in a TKO loss. He doesn't look the same. He used to be one of the top prospects in the UFC. Just seems to be lacking confidence now. And he got finished by all three of those guys, if I'm not mistaken. Bellato, he's the bigger guy. He's stronger. He's got knockout power. He's finished quite a few fights. His only losses come by the same guy, Vitor Petrino, both knockout losses. I guess Jimmy Crute could wrestle death Bellato here, I think, but for the most part, I think it's Bellato's fight to lose. It's a pretty close pick or close odds as far as the numbers go, but Bellato's just the bigger, stronger guy. I think what we're really going to see here is probably two donks going at it, and just Bellato's going to be the bigger guy that can knock him down, maybe hold him against the cage a little more. I don't think it's going to be a great fight in this one, but how do you see this one going?
I think we're on the same page here too, Matt. I don't think Jimmy Crute is going to get a lot going for him here. He's got a good ground game, like you mentioned. That's what I have here in my notes with him. I think that he's got a very good ground game. That could be a problem for Rodolfo here. But I don't know if Bellato is going to really, really have too much of a struggle with that ground game because he's got a pretty good takedown defense himself of something like I think it was 47 or 53%. So if he can just get back on his feet after maybe one or two takedowns and just get points with the striking and hold him against the cage, I think this one's just his to win. I mean, unless he just slips up and Crute gets him with maybe just like an uppercut and gets him to the ground. But I don't see him losing this with the striking ability of him, with the points that he can gain, or just maybe with the knockout power he's got behind him alone. And like you said, Crute's just he's in a little bit of a downward spell over his last few, and I don't see him. He could come out on top being at home, with the crowd behind him. It could have a lot of motivation and get the adrenaline going for him. But I just think Bellato is the better fighter here on the way up, and I think he's going to come out victorious here.
Yeah, and I don't think either guy are great fighters. But like you said, I just think Bellato's a little better. I think he's a little stronger. I don't think either have a lot of technical ability that they show when they're in the octagon anymore. So yeah, I see Bellato winning this, but it could be wrestle death by Jimmy Crute. Just lay on him for 15 minutes and spam takedowns if he ever gets up. So we're gonna move on to the feature fight: Justin Tafa versus Talison Teixeira. And yeah, how do you said this is the fight you're most excited for? So you broke it down a little bit, but how do you see this fight going here?
I Justin Toff is no joke here. We can't just sit here just brush him off here. But Taliesin Teixeira is knockout power, 7 wins, all by the first round. Nothing's escaping him. He's got unbelievable power. He's, I think, 6 years younger and got a 9-inch reach advantage on him. So even if he somehow slips up, he can step back and still get the striking range on him. He can hold him off. Um, his significant strike, I think, was his percentage. His accuracy is very, very good too. I think he's around like 50% on his significant strike. So he's still got pretty good accuracy as well, even if he's just because he throws as well like 14 strikes a minute. So he comes out of the gate just gassing it. Um, I just don't see much coming out from Justin Taffa here, but I think Taliesin Teixeira is going to walk away with this one victorious by a knockout or maybe just a TKO, getting him to the ground. But
Yeah, I don't think Tafa is very good. He's a power puncher, but he's got no takedown defense, no ground game. He can't get up if he is down. His He's a power puncher, but his shots don't land clean a lot of the times because he's always giving up a height advantage, giving up a reach advantage. And coming in against Taliesin Teixeira, who's 6'7", he's going to have a 9-inch reach advantage, like you said. Teixeira, he's green to the UFC, but all 7 of his fights he's won by finish, 6 knockouts, 1 submission. Dude's a beast. If he goes to the ground, Teixeira's clearly got the edge there, just because everybody has the edge on the ground against Justin Tafa. Tafa could land the crazy overhand right to knock out Teixeira because he does have power, but I think Teixeira, unless he just gets dumb, he's probably going to win this one. He could outpoint him. He might get the knockout, but I see him getting closer to outpointing him, or maybe a submission here. But yeah, being young at heavyweight isn't always a blessing, though. It's one of the rare divisions that's not where, at heavyweight, you're young, you're not necessarily heavyweights fight different. They're bigger, they're stronger. You don't have that chin necessarily at that younger age. So Teixeira could get knocked out by a crazy punch by Justin Tafa, but we'll just have to wait and see. I'm not sure how that fight goes. I would probably pick Teixeira. It's a pretty close to pick him if I'm not mistaken on the odds. But yeah, I'd stay away from that one. But we're moving on to the championship fights. First, we got Zhang Weili defending against Tatiana Suarez. We already talked about, Suarez. Good story. She was going to go for the Olympics, was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, had to go out, join the UFC, was a rising star, and then had 4 years of inactivity for illness. I would assume it had something to do with her previous diagnosis, but that's just speculation. And so there's been a course of inactivity, but she is 11-0, great wrestler, relentless pace. She's got good submissions as well, and they've really improved since she's been with her boyfriend Patchy Mix, champion over in Bellator PFL, what you call it. But she can do it all. Zhang Wei Li, she's got nasty striking. She's a fireball. She can come out just foot on the gas, right at you, knock you out early, overwhelm you with strikes. She can wrestle you. She can submit you as well. She can do it all. She's a really competent wrestler. She does everything well, really technical, and she's strong as hell. She's tiny, but she's strong for 115, and she can do it for 25 minutes. She's got a good gas tank on her. So if she can withstand the first two rounds, which is going to be a crazy pace from Tatiana Suarez, avoid the submissions there, I really think Weili could outpoint her on the scorecards or even get a late finish on Suarez because Suarez might be gassed. That's how I see this one going. I think that now it's closer to pick 'em odds. I think Weili's at plus 105, but at one point Suarez was a minus 180 favorite. Yeah, wild. So I missed jumping on that. That was early Monday, but yeah, odds have certainly swung. I really think Weili's a live dog here, but how do you see this?
I mean, I'm right there with you. I think again, Matt. I think right now we're three together, and you have the one no decision with the Teixeira fight. I think with the Weili's activity versus Suarez's inactivity is going to play a lot of difference here. Um, I know Suarez is 11-0. She's got the great ground game. I think she's got the strong power. She's got the accuracy with her strikes. But Weili is a Swiss Army knife in that 115 body of hers. She can take you to the ground and she can just tire you out, just hold you to the ground, use that shoulder, use that chin, keep you down, just give you the shoulder, just give you the shoulder to the face, give you an elbow every now and then, and just hold you down. And then if she wants to get you back up, she can come at you like you said, a fireball with strikes. And her accuracy is insane. She's strong as hell. But we can't just dismiss Suarez here. Suarez is a tank. She's got a good ground game. It's just like you said, if she can make it into the later rounds, and if Suarez can hold up the stamina to maybe defend off her in the later rounds, she has a really good shot here. Um, but it's just all up, I think, to Suarez's stamina. I thought I lost you again.
Oh,
Or I think it's just up to Suarez's stamina personally. I think if she can withhold Weili's, just like you said, she can go 25 minutes of just pure just domination, holding you either to the ground, striking you, going at her pace. But then like Suarez has her own pace that she can dictate. She's bulky for 115. She's got power behind her strikes. She's got strong legs. She can kick. Um, and I think this can go either way, Matt. I don't have a decision on this fight at all. I think Suarez can go 12-0, but also at the same time, Weili can defend her title. I mean, this can go either way. This is so hard for me to pick. It
yeah,
really is.
I agree with you. It's tough to pick, but I just think Weili, I think she's being discounted what she's been able to do to these girls. And in the second Rose Namajunas fight, that was razor close. That could have gone either way. I mean, she wrestled the hell out of Namajunas. Namajunas is a beast. She's moved up to 125 because she was just tired of cutting the weight to get there. But other than Namajunas, she absolutely just destroyed Amanda Lemos. Who was the other girl she fought? Yan Jianan destroyed her. Carla Esparza destroyed her. I mean, she's been just on an absolute tear. I think because of the two losses to Nami Yunus, you got to say Nami Yunus is the best 115er of all time. But behind her is Zhang Weili, and Zhang Weili is going for a more impressive resume at this point. While it might not have the legends that Rose Nami Yunus has, she's beaten Andrade. Actually, it does because she's beaten Andrade. She's beaten Young Jacek.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yes,
only
she has. Yeah.
beaten is Nami Yunus, and that'll always be the asterisk there. But she's slowly building. She could break records for her title defenses at 115. She's so dominant. But we'll move on to the main event here, and then we'll get into our bets and close up the show. But Sean Strickland taking on Dricuss du Plessis, trying to get his title back in a fight that he lost in a razor close split decision a year ago. This is Strickland du Plessis 2. How do you see this going down, Cody? Who's winning? Who's walking away with the strap here? How's this fight going?
I have Duplessis walking away again by a split decision. Um, I think with like how you mentioned earlier, Strickland's ground game isn't a joke. And if Duplessis decides to take this to the ground, Strickland has shown the ability to fight on the ground as well and take this back up to the feet. Um, he's a very smart fighter. He's a very strategic fighter. He knows how to get his points when he needs to get his points. He knows how to save his energy when he needs to. And he also knows when to and point his attacks. I mean, Strickland is a shit talker, but he also is a fighter. He knows what he's doing. But Duplessis is an animal that has come into his own over the last couple years. I mean, whenever he first came into the UFC, there was question marks. We knew the potential was there, but it's come to fruition the last few years when that chin has developed and the game has finally slowed down to him and he has finally mastered his craft. And I think Duplessis is only, I think, what, 30, 34? And Strickland was 36 in this fight. Or do
Yeah,
I have it backwards?
that doesn't sound wrong. I'm not sure on the ages. I guess I didn't look
I
up.
think I think Duplessis, I think 34. So I mean, he's I think you could say in his prime right now.
Yeah.
And I think for this one right now, Strickland is holding on to that door handle of the prime.
Yep.
So I think we're just I think we're going to see a split decision here. We're going to see a really, really good fight. I mean, this is going to be the best fight on the card, personally. I think um, we're going to see a good fight. We're going to see a lot of striking. We're going to see a lot of takedowns. We're going to see. You might even see a submission if somebody gets lazy and they can get the position that they need to get to. Um, but I think it's going to be another split decision. I think it's going to go to Plessy. I think it's going to be like a 20 like a 29-28 split. It's going to be really, really tight.
7.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think Duplessis is going to take it as well. I think he could get a submission. I think it'll be a unanimous decision. A lot of people think it's going to be the same as the first fight just because these guys do have very unique styles, and I don't think we're going to see a lot change from that. But I think we're going to see Duplessis. When you're the champ, you get better and better each fight you defend with the championship. And I think he's going to be more confident shooting for those explosive, awkward takedowns and getting Strickland down and just taking him down and frustrating him and doing it over and over again. Strickland, what he's got to do in the coming back is he's going to have to hold his ground instead of retreat like he did in the last fight when Duplessis would have these explosive motions. If Strickland can hold his ground instead of just jabbing away or just running away, if he throws a jab and really sits down on a right hand when Duplessis coming in, he could drop. He could drop Duplessis. He's got the power. He doesn't always knock people out, but he could do it, especially if he sits down and the way Duplessis throws himself into those shots. He's open for the shot, but I do think that the takedowns are going to be key for Duplessis, and I think he's going to take a unanimous decision here, maybe a late sub, but I would venture on the unanimous decision. So
Okay. Okay.
with that being said, let's get into our picks and then wrap this up here. We got $1,000 up. Last week I was up 705, so I had 1705 coming back, and you were up 585, so you had 1585 coming back. So you were currently at a 120 deficit on the year. But with that being said, what are your picks? How do you spread your 1,000 for this card, Cody?
I have Weili and Suarez to go the distance. No. At minus 166 over there on FanDuel. I'm going to throw $300 on that to net 180.72.
Okay.
I'm going to keep this short this time around. I've only got 4 bets.
Okay.
Throwing higher money on them. I've got Taliesin Teixeira by KO or TKO at plus 115. I'm going to throw 250 on that to net 287.
Okay.
My next one's going to be the Rodolfo Bellato money line minus 170. I'm going to throw 200 on that to net 117. I think he's going to walk away with that one. There's good money on these lines. It's just the fights are just mid.
Yeah.
And I think Duplessis and Strickland to go the distance. Yes. At minus 164, I'm going to throw 250 on that to net 152.
Okay.
With that, I think there's a lot of possibility with these 4 bets here. I'm just eager to see what you got to go on here, Matt.
All right. So I went a little different route. I just did straight up picks, and I have a parlay in here as well. But we're gonna go with first. We got the champions, Dricuss Duplessis minus 210. I put 300 on him. That gets us 135 back, so 435 total. Then I got Zhang Weili, 100 on her at minus 105. That gets us 195 back total, so a $95 profit. And then I have an and still parlay, hoping that it makes my night here. Plus 185 for Dricuss and Weili to both win. 200 on that gets us 570, so a 370 profit. And wrap things up with a couple of guys that are not up and comers, not much of anything at this point yet. But we got Jack Jenkins. I think he's going as a dog plus 195. We're putting 100 on him. That gets us 295 back, 195 profit. Then we got Jake Matthews minus 240 favorite. We're going to put 300 on him. That profits 162, 462 back total. So, a lot to win here, a lot to lose. We're going to see how we go. Keep these numbers rolling, keep track of them on the year. But that's all we got for you on our picks for UFC 312. Cody, thank you for coming on the show. That's all I got for you. Thank you for tuning in. Tune into the card this weekend, Saturday, coming at you from Australia. I can't wait.